President Trump says he does not think there will be any additional escalation following the Justice Department's indictment of former Cuban President Raúl Castro. The 94-year-old former leader of Cuba's Communist Party is widely recognized as one of the country's most powerful figures. He now faces murder charges, along with conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals and destruction of an aircraft in connection with the Cuban military's downing of 2 civilian planes in 1996. In a statement posted to social media and translated from Spanish, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel said, quote, "This is a political maneuver devoid of any legal foundation aimed solely at the padding the fabricated dossier they used to justify the folly of a military aggression against Cuba." CBS News national correspondent Lilia Luciano joined us now. So remind us how we got here and the significance of the indictment for both Cuba and the U.S.
Well, this is... Some see it as political, some see it as symbolic. This is a difficult case to carry through. First of all, Raúl Castro is 94 years old. The charges could carry life in sentence, which for a 94-year-old person is not a very long time, I must say. But how will the United States, will the U.S. go into Cuba and take him like they did with Maduro? President Trump said today, no, there will be no escalation. As you said, I don't think there needs to be. Look, the place is falling apart. It's a mess, he added. This goes back to a case that happened in the 1990s. The Cuban American and the Cuban exile community, especially in South Florida, has been demanding justice in this case in particular because 3 American citizens and 1 U.S. resident, all from Cuban origin, were killed by the Cuban military. Part of this indictment, it includes the other people charged are the fighter pilots who struck those 2 airplanes that killed those men. So this is something that is, of course, being celebrated widely, especially in South Florida. I was just reading a statement from Brian Calvo, the mayor of Hialeah, who really echoes what people feel. He says, this has to be more than a legal move. He says the goal has to be complete democratic transition. So it's a message that's being sent. Potentially, of course, nobody knows what the strategy will be. But before Maduro was captured, the U.S. and President Trump was directly threatening a military invasion into Venezuela. We're not hearing that from the president right now.
What would be the difference? I know that he's sort of floated the idea of a friendly takeover, something like what he did with Delcy Rodriguez of Venezuela, but would that work in Cuba?
I mean, Cuba and Venezuela are completely different cases. This is... Castro is being accused of premeditated murder because he was the minister of defense, basically, in Cuba. So every order, what the U.S. is saying, would have come from him. Very different charges. In case of Maduro, it was tying him to drug trafficking. So in that, they're, of course, very different. Cuba is a one-party system. There has never been, Cuba has not allowed for any resistance, for any opposition for decades to really be able to come together. Even in the case of Venezuela, we're seeing now how people who were allied to Maduro, including Delcy Rodriguez herself, are extraditing some of Maduro's allies. Clearly, Venezuela is cooperating with the United States. How are you going to do that in Cuba without an opposition that has any power, without political parties? So I think the U.S. is being careful to continue to exert that pressure. Marco Rubio has forever said, you know, the goal has to be regime change. But clearly, the U.S. is negotiating with Cuba. We had the director of the CIA there last week. And on that same day, or I think hours later or the day later, is when we learned that this indictment was coming. So it's clearly something that is meant to put enough pressure for those negotiations to happen, for there to be some kind of democratic transition. But I just can't imagine a full military invasion when President Trump himself is saying there's no need for escalation.
Lilia Luciano, thank you.